morning, everyone. Good afternoon. The Secretary General will be in Paris, France on Monday to attend the Artificial Intelligence Action Summit. He will speak at one of the sessions on Tuesday, and he will tell leaders gathered there that the growing concentration of AI capabilities in the hands of a few companies and countries risks widening global inequalities and deepening geopolitical divides. He will underscore that we must prevent a world of AI haves and have-nots, and will call on AI leaders to pool expertise and cooperate with each other. He will emphasize that it is in the interests of government and technology leaders to commit to global guardrails. While in Paris, he is also expected to meet with President Emmanuel Macron and other world leaders. The Secretary General will leave France on Wednesday. We've been asked about our response to the US government's executive order regarding the International Criminal Court. And I can say the following. International criminal law is an essential element to fighting impunity, which is unfortunately widespread in today's world. The International Criminal Court is its essential element, and it must be allowed to work in full independence. This morning in Geneva, the Human Rights Council held a special session on the situation in Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo. The High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, said that if nothing is done to end the offensive of the M23, supported by the Rwanda Defense Forces, the worst may be yet to come for the people of Eastern DRC, but also beyond the country's borders. He said that he is horrified by the spread of sexual violence, adding that his team in the DRC is currently verifying multiple allegations of rape, gang rape, and sexual slavery throughout the conflict zones. Mr. Turk also said that hundreds of human rights defenders, journalists, and members of civil society have reported to his office that they have been threatened or are being pursued by the M23 and Rwandan forces. Our human rights colleagues have also facilitated the protection of judicial authorities who were in danger. And to note that this morning, the Human Rights Council adopted by consensus a resolution establishing a fact-finding mission by the UN Human Rights Office and an independent commission of inquiry on the DRC. Both will examine violations of international humanitarian law and human rights law committed in North and South Kivu provinces of the DRC since January 2022. Bintou Keita, the head of our peacekeeping mission in the DRC, MONUSCO, also spoke in Geneva this morning. She said that hundreds of thousands of displaced people are being forced by M23 to return to their places of origin without any guarantee or humanitarian assistance on their safe and dignified return. She also expressed her concerns about the use of misinformation and disinformation, adding that the suspension of social networks such as X and TikTok by the Congolese authorities is a serious infringement of the right to information and must be swiftly lifted. In a region with a sensitive history, Ms. Keita added, ethnically motivated attacks remain a serious concern. And concerning correct information, we have the following update from our peacekeeping colleagues in the DRC. We want to share precise information following press reports about civilians and disarmed personnel sheltering in MONUSCO bases. The peacekeeping mission is providing protection to unarmed individuals who sought refuge within its premises in strict accordance with international humanitarian law and human rights law. No individual under MONUSCO protection left its premises while bearing arms. And meanwhile, on the humanitarian front, the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs reports that continued clashes in South Kivu are triggering mass displacement of people and causing civilian casualties. OCHA says that thousands of people are now on the move in South Kivu, with many fleeing active combat zones towards Bukavu. Yesterday, according to our local humanitarian partners, a bombing resulted in 3 civilians being injured and power infrastructure damaged in the town of Nyabibwe, about 60 kilometers north of the provincial capital, Bukavu. Meanwhile, in North Kivu, 3 non-governmental workers were killed on Wednesday under circumstances that remain unclear. This incident is a reminder of the unacceptable risks facing aid workers. The non-governmental organization has had to suspend food and agricultural assistance in the area, affecting 36,000 people. Elsewhere in North Kivu, OCHA and our humanitarian partners are continuing to assess conditions in and around Goma, where hundreds of thousands of people are still on the move. An assessment this week estimates that nearly 33,000 people have returned to villages in Nyiragongo territory immediately northeast of Goma. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization says that health facilities in North Kivu have been affected by recent violence. Many are destroyed, while some others struggle to restart operations. Cancer, diabetes, hypertension, mental health, and other routine services are also affected as medicines have run out, and health workers are either absent or overburdened. WHO adds that the threat of infectious diseases has multiplied. Cholera, malaria, measles, meningitis, mpox, and tuberculosis are among the infectious threats in the area. The water supply in Goma was disrupted and has been partially restored in some areas, leading people to rely on water from the lake and heightening the risk of cholera. Nearly 600 suspected cases of cholera and 14 deaths were reported in North Kivu between the 1st and 27th of January. WHO has deployed emergency medical supplies, hygiene, and water treatment supplies, and intends to increase hospital capacity by 1,000 beds. Supplies are being depleted rapidly, and more resources are urgently needed. I have another travel note for you. Our Undersecretary General for Political and Peacebuilding Affairs, Rosemary DiCarlo, will travel to Cyprus over the weekend. On the 10th of February, she will meet with the Greek Cypriot and Turkish Cypriot leaders, Mr. Nikos Christodoulidis and Mr. Ersin Tatar, respectively. They will discuss the way forward on the Cyprus issue in preparation of an informal meeting in a broader format. In addition, Ms. DiCarlo will be focusing on the work of the Secretary General's Good Office's mission and meeting with representatives of civil society, including youth and women's groups. Following her visit to Cyprus, she will hold meetings in Athens, Greece on the 12th of February and Ankara, Turkey on the 13th of February for discussions on the Cyprus issue, as well as other key regional and global developments. Turning to Gaza, the Undersecretary General for Humanitarian Affairs, Tom Fletcher, visited a UN Relief and Works Agency-run shelter for internally displaced people in Deir el-Bala today before heading to Jerusalem via the Kerem Shalom crossing. Mr. Fletcher met with displaced families who spoke of the hardships they have endured over the past 16 months. He also heard from staff managing the shelter about the ongoing response and challenges they face in providing critical support. The UNRWA site is one of the many schools in Gaza that were turned into shelter for displaced families. Mr. Fletcher met children who are missing out on their education, stressing the need to reopen schools in Gaza as soon as possible. In Jerusalem, the Undersecretary General met with heads of UN agencies and other humanitarian organizations. They discussed ways to sustain the humanitarian scale-up in Gaza, as well as continue critical support across the West Bank. In a social media post today, the World Health Organization says its team has supported the medical evacuation of 178 patients this month, including 115 children from Gaza via the Rafah crossing. WHO notes that between 12,000 and 14,000 people still require medical evacuation from Gaza. Meanwhile, the World Food Program says it has sent more than 15,000 tons of food into the Gaza Strip since the start of the ceasefire, reaching more than 525,000 people with food parcels, hot meals, and cash. With flour and fuel, WFP is now operating 22 bakeries across Gaza and is providing cash so that families can decide for themselves how to meet their most basic needs beyond food. UNICEF reports that since the ceasefire took effect, the agency has reached more than 10,000 infants across Gaza with ready-to-use complementary foods to improve their dietary diversity. This week, our partners working on shelter have been assessing the impact of a winter storm on shelters in different locations. In northern Gaza, partners are also preparing to distribute 1,500 tents to returnees in Gaza and the North Gaza governorates. Although shelter support is scaling up, our partners note that nearly 1 million displaced Palestinians are living in substandard tents or makeshift shelters, with families resorting to sewing old rice sacks together for basic cover. Many more are living in crowded shelters in unsafe conditions. And turning to the West Bank, OCHA reports that Israeli forces' ongoing operations in Jenin, Tulkarem, and Tubas continue to displace Palestinians, severely restricting their access to essential services and causing widespread destruction. Our humanitarian partners estimate that 82% of displaced families in the northern West Bank are currently living in rented accommodations. Turning to Syria, the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs reports that we and our partners continue to deliver critical cross-border assistance from Turkey. This week, 19 trucks crossed into northwest Syria, carrying nearly 300 tons of food aid from the World Food Program for 90,000 people. as well as medical supplies from the World Health Organization and education kits from UNICEF to reach 450,000 people. OCHA welcomes the extension by the caretaker authorities for the UN to deliver humanitarian assistance through the Bab el-Hawa crossing for an additional 6 months until August 7th of this year. Bab el-Hawa remains the most used border crossing into Syria due to its direct route to Idlib, where 2.8 million people are in need of humanitarian aid, with over half of those living in displacement camps. The cross-border operation also enables regular UN missions to northwest Syria to support and monitor projects and services in Idlib and Aleppo, ensuring that critical aid gets to the people it needs to reach. Meanwhile, hostilities continue to affect the northeast of the country, with incidents reported this week in eastern Aleppo, in the vicinity of the Tishrin Dam, as well as Al-Hasakeh and Al-Raqqa governorates. On Haiti, the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs says that gender-based violence affected thousands of people across the country last year. Our partners reported nearly 6,500 incidents, with actual figures likely much higher. Nearly two-thirds of cases related to cases of rape and sexual assault. In December alone, more than 630 incidents were recorded, a 38% increase compared to the combined total recorded in October and November. Almost two-thirds of cases are reported to have been perpetrated by members of armed groups. Children have not been spared, and UNICEF announced today a staggering 1,000% rise in sexual violence against children between 2023 and last year. And also today, our colleagues in Haiti are drawing attention to a funding shortfall, threatening the continuation of the UN Humanitarian Air Service in the country. As you know, UNHAS, which is managed by the World Food Programme, is a lifeline for the humanitarian community, providing safe and reliable access to remote, hard-to-reach areas across Haiti. $3.9 million is urgently needed to sustain operations over the next 3 months. The Food and Agriculture Organization today reported that its food price index declined in January, averaging 124.9 points during the month. This is down 1.6% from its December level. FAO says the drop was driven by significant decreases in the international quotations for vegetable oils and sugar. The index was 6.2% higher than its corresponding level 1 year ago, but remained 22% below its peak reached in March 2022. And last, we would like to say thank you to Austria, Bulgaria, the Czech Republic, Eswatini, Georgia, Malta, and the Republic of Korea for their full payments to the regular budget. This brings the final number of member states on the honor roll to 49. And with that, I'm free to take your questions. If there's no questions, then yes, okay, Bisan.
So the Egyptian presidency have issued a statement that the SG has spoken with the Egyptian president. I don't know if you have anything on that you can share with us.
I don't have anything to confirm about a call with the Egyptian president. If I have anything, I'll let you know later. Jordan? If Jordan's not there, then Michelle Nichols?
No, I am here.
Oh,
I am
okay.
here.
All right.
Farhan.
All right. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can.
Yeah, I said happy Friday. I have two questions, Farhan. I'm going to ask them together, so in case if we get disconnected. My first question, if you can tell me who owns the land where the UN Secretariat is located currently? And does the SG have any plan B for relocation in case of the United States decided to pull out of the United Nations? This is maybe a strange question. The other issue, I'm sure you were asked this question for many times in your 25 years working for United Nations. Does the Palestine refugees have the right, or do the Palestine refugee have the right to return home, and where is home? Thank you.
The question of the Palestinian refugees is one that needs to be resolved in negotiations regarding the status of Palestine, and of course, those negotiations are meant to be held between the Palestinians and Israelis. Regarding the land, this land was given to the United Nations and is owned by the United Nations. I don't want to indulge in any speculation about the somewhat bizarre scenario you depicted. Deji? Oh yeah, Michelle first, and then Deji.
Thanks, Farhan. I know you responded yesterday on the ICC and the US imposing sanctions, but I just wanted to follow up to ask you for a comment with regard to the UN headquarters agreement and, you know, if and when these sanctions might be targeting senior officials who need to come to the UN. Could we get a comment on that?
Well, we trust that any restrictions taken against individuals would be implemented consistently with the host country's obligations under the UN headquarters agreement. Obviously, the headquarters agreement entails certain obligations on the host country, and we expect them to follow through on those. Okay, Deji?
Yes, Farhan, first I want to show you a map of Syria. This is a map that Ministry of Interior of Syria just released. In this map, two parts are significantly reduced. One is adjacent to Turkey, another one is Golan Heights. So if the Syrian government, they don't insist on the sovereignty of Golan Heights, what would be the result of that part of the land? Would that be a sovereign land for Israel now?
That's a speculative question. On the question of Golan Heights and how that matters to be resolved, there's a series of UN resolutions dating back to the 1970s about Golan Heights, and I would just refer you back to those.
Actually, that's why I asked this question. I mean, if the Syrian government they no longer insist that it's part of the Syrian sovereignty, what would happen to all those resolutions?
That's a question based on a hypothesis that I
that's the map they just released.
The formal position of the Syrian government is one that would need to be conveyed.
Okay, another question, also concerning UN. Today, President Trump said that he's going to sign an executive order to push back the Biden's push for the paper straw.
For the what?
The paper straw, the straw made by papers, not by plastics.
Yes.
So I noticed that in the UN headquarters, it's all paper straws. Would the UN headquarters consider change the paper ones to plastic ones?
No, we had reasons for environmental sustainability to change all the implements that had been plastic to either paper or to wood, and we're sticking with the reasoning behind that. And with that, I wish you all a good weekend.